Because of this, I feel like the fact that both games end on a circle of 4 quadrants suggests some sense of the transcendence of normal change through state after state. A center that is not time or space, a never-ending time or eternity, a never-ending space. In the first game, what surrounds Grunty is a series of Jinjos, the sky beings who fly and evoke a certain sense of divinity with the Jinjonator. He emerges out of the rock as a flying spirit that sheds its rock exterior, a material exterior. These beings that fly out of the material shell confine Grunty into a material shell, a rock. She gets locked inside a rocky interior. Her matter is killed by spirit people, sky beings. She wanted to escape her material limits, so she gets limited deeper. In the second game, this circle surrounding Grunty is made not of flying sky beings, but of material beings who live on the ground, and they elevate Grunty into the sky. Her head is disconnected from her body, so the top part of her body is disconnected from the ground, the bottom part. Furthermore, this top part, this head, is thrown up into the sky by the material characters. She wanted to escape her disconnection from her body, so she gets disconnected even more, thrown even higher up into the sky, away from the ground of her body. The first game throws Grunty into paralysis, under the earth. The second game throws her up into eternal movement, throwing her up into the sky again. The first game was, I suggested, about matter, or no time, and the second game is about time. Time is about the sky, or spirit, and matter seems to be about stillness. Her body in the first game is not changing, and she wants it to change. In the second game, her body is changing, it's falling apart. Her head falls, her eyeballs fall off. Her body changes and she wants to be in one piece. Perhaps that's what life means to her. To have a body means to have all the parts of your body together. They're not separating into multiplicity. Banjo-Tooie's bosses sort of share similar conundrums. Target Zan's body is broken to bits. His legs fall. He is made of parts that separate and fall. Old King Cole's body falls apart, his arms, legs, his body turns into a multiplicity of parts that separate, a collectivity of parts. Mr. Patch's body is made of patches, made of different parts that can untie him. Wu Fak Fak's body is covered in boils, and bursting these boils mutilates him gradually. We slowly cut away parts of his body, bursting his skin here and there, and tearing him apart, so to speak. Minji Jongo's skin collapses. He's made of different patches of skin which come apart one by one after the other. Weldar, too, is held together by plates which come off one after one. So a dead body in the second game is a body that changes too much, more than you want it. A living body in the first one is a body that doesn't change as much as you'd like. Perhaps also, in the first game, Grunty wants to be liked. She wants to be part of a group, to be part of a multiplicity of parts, to have a self composed of lots of different selves, to be in a relationship with others. In the second game, she would rather have a unity. The first game ascends towards multiplicity or change, the sky. The second game descends down into unity, stillness, the earth. That's what Grunty desires. Spiral Mountain ascends towards sky and descends towards earth. Spiral Mountain, as we mentioned, is a series of mountains that all ascend towards the sky and descend towards the earth. The underground, that which is below, is water in those cases, and fire is what is above, sky. Water is always below these symbolic mountains. Literal water, blue water flowing down below. But above these mountains, as we showed, are sort of symbols of fire. A picture of a star, a picture of a sun, a lighthouse, a glowing red light evocative of fire. But not fire. Not fire in the same way water is shown. Water is just water, plain water. in all the examples. Fire is never fire. It's never just fire. It's always a sort of alluded fire, alluded to fire. We get a multitude of different ways of showing the image of fire, and one way of showing water. Water is just one picture. Fire is a multiplicity of pictures. Fire is an image that points towards fire. Fire is hidden. It's not shown. It's just suggested. We don't get literal fire. Water is only literal. Fire changes through a series of different forms. Water takes only one form. Fire changes. Water is not. It's not moving. Fire is flickering. It's moving. Fire moves fast. Water moves but slowly. Fire tends towards speed. Water tends towards deeper, slower current. Water slows down to a single movement, a single representation. Fire is a multiple representation of itself, alluded, quickly changing through many forms. Fire never reaches its literal form. Water only has its literal form, still, always slowing. The fire in her mouth is visible only from the outside. We get the impression that there's fire inside. We get the shine of the fire. We see its projection on the walls of the cave, but we don't see the direct fire. This rapid change between different forms, multiplicity of form, seems to be about seeing the reflection of an invisible fire. Water is a reflective surface that is still and lets images be projected onto it, but we don't see the images. We only see the pure water they are projected onto. It's the stillness on which movement happens, multiplicity happens. Multiplicity is the change that emerges from a unity behind it, stillness behind multiplicity, a stillness that doesn't change, a central point that isn't visible but that from which emerges all. It may be me, but I think it looks like a volcano, Spiral Mountain, because it's so thin and sort of peaks up in an exponentially thinner way, which is what a spiral does anyway. I'm not an expert on volcanoes, but I feel like this conic structure is typical of a certain kind, at least, the kind that is commonly shown in artistic renderings, at least. A mountain which sharply and exponentially ascends in a conic shape is often considered a volcano, I feel. That's one other reason I feel the top of the mountain is associated to fire, since the top of a volcano, if that were it, would be associated with a fire, a flame coming out of it. We have a top red and a bottom blue, Banjo Kazooie. The top part is red, the bottom is blue. Kazooie does most of the acting and moving. Banjo is sort of lazy and doesn't like getting up. Kazooie hopes people will give her something. She tries to get what she wants from people and meet her desires. Banjo is always trying to help and meet people's desires instead of his own. He gives of himself. Kazooie takes for herself. Banjo embraces all. Kazooie rejects and mocks and bullies all. Water embraces, it holds it all, it adapts itself to any surface, allows things to go inside it. Fire doesn't allow any surface, it burns anything that it touches, doesn't let stuff get inside it, annihilates anyone who may enter. The spiral speeds up as it ascends, since the rounds of its spiral get smaller and smaller and take less and less time to go, so they go faster each time as they go around. As it goes down, the spiral gets wider and bigger and takes longer to traverse each round of itself, getting slower and slower every time. The spiral goes up towards heat and descends towards cold. The cold gets slower and slower until it freezes, it just stops. Heat just excites things faster and faster until they're bopping up and down without stopping. You find a series of propellers in the middle of the water of Atlantis, and you shoot at them with ice. The ice freezes them and thus slows them down to a still point. When they're still, you can move through them. The same happens with an octopus. Its tentacles are too fast, but you freeze it with an ice egg and it slows down until it stops. And then you can move through it. It is a guardian that guards this passage. Unless you pass it, you can't pass through. Same thing happens with the propellers. I think it's the same idea. They are this passage. Unless you pass through them, you can't move on. And freezing them is the way. It slows them down enough. Another instance in Atlantis where ice eggs are used to a sort of similar end is where you power up the UFO with ice. The aliens say their ship is powered up by ice, so you throw 4 ice eggs into their containers and this powers up the machine. On the one hand, this is also a way to unblock a passage. The ship couldn't move through the opening unless ice was used. Ice allows it to move past a blocked position, where it couldn't move, towards a fluid position, where it could easily fly through the passageway above it. Furthermore, it moves towards ice. The ice mountains are its destination. Here, it is ice that allows it to move. Unless ice is used, it's still. The ice key in Banjo-Tooie is a giant key of ice. Its design implies that the key which opens up a door is made of ice. Ice is what opens up a door, to then pass through that door. The ice key specifically opens up a safe which ultimately leads you to obtaining the Dragon Kazooie body. Dragons are a creature associated to the ice and fire mountains, the ice mountain being where the ice key is found. Dragon Kazooie is, of course, a fire-breathing creature, so we see a duality between ice opening up a door which contains fire. Another duality is that the safe seems to have a key-shaped carving in it, as if the ice key was carved out of the safe itself, so that the key which opens the lock is made of the lock it opens. The key opens up the passageway for something that is its opposite. The key could be dissolved by fire, but instead it is the way in which we reach fire. Fire comes out of ice, and ice comes out of fire, we suppose. A theme that is expressed in this game in the ice-fire mountains, obviously. I'm intrigued by this ability of ice to slow things down, however. It seems in Atlantis as if the ice opens up doors because it slows them down. It slows the fast movement of the passageway's blockage until it's a fast enough speed, or a slow speed enough so that it can be passaged. What allows us to move through is that it slows down to our own speed. Something was at a higher speed than us. We can now move through it because it is slow. We can see it. We can clearly see the gaps between the ventilators and see their passageway, how to move through them. We can see how to move through it. We can perceive it. Another instance of a UFO is the one Captain Blubber rides. He owns a wave racer hire shop above where the UFO has landed and hopes to win more money so he can buy a UFO. His shop is for wave racers, machines that can travel on water. He then hopes to fly in the air. So he's hoping to transition from water to air, from water travel to air. The game ends with him flying in this aircraft. The game, Banjo-Kazooie, the previous game, featured him riding a wave racer, the machine he then sells. He's stranded on his broken ship in Banjo-Kazooie, the first game, and ends up with a better vessel. Then he's stranded on his vessel shop. His vessel shop is not working. It's not giving him money. He wishes it would work and give him more money so that he can buy an even better machine, this time one that ascends up from the water. A possible connection is being drawn between having money and being able to improve your transport. You can move to better places with money. Let's return for a moment to the UFO down below. It is piloted by aliens called Alpha, Beta and Gamma, obviously a reference to the letters Alpha, Beta and Gamma. These letters are from the Greek alphabet, the same alphabet used in the lower Atlantis area to mark the entrance puzzle to one of the temples. The letters used there are different, Sigma, Delta, Pi and Omega, but the same alphabet. Curiously, a UFO with inhabitants with Greek letters for names end up in a land where Greek letters decorate the temples. Of course, Atlantis is based on a Greek myth, so the alphabet seems to be in reference to this. Alf, Betty, and Gammo, however, are named after the first three letters, sort of suggesting not a random selection of letters, but an orderly selection from the start of the alphabet onwards. Of course, we use the word alphabet, which is the first two letters of the alphabet, to refer to it. Now, this could mean that the UFO is being driven by the alphabet, or by language. Captain Blubber is the rider of the other UFO, and this is an interesting fact to me. The verb to blubber means to cry or to sob. This makes sense because the captain is often found crying in both Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie. He cries because his machines don't work, as a business or as a machine itself. Blubber also means fat of a sea animal, so it's a play on words on his size. To me, this is interesting because blubber as a verb for crying or sobbing is a word that refers to mouth expressions. This wouldn't be that interesting, but it seems that no other character in Banjo-Tooie, as far as I can tell, has a name that refers to making sounds with one's mouth, or to the sounds the character makes, other than Grunty, whose name is a play on words on grunt, the mouth sound, it seems. So here, only two characters have names that refer to the mouth sound they make. To me, this suggests language. So language is riding the vehicle, the UFO, both in the case of the alphabet and in the case of the blubber sounds. I'll spend some time navigating around this point. Grunty is clearly associated with language because, I think, of her role as a witch. Why? Because as a witch, she speaks in fairy tale-like rhymes, so her domain of language and wordplay is shown to be a main point. Of course, she casts spells, which are also often based on a domain of language, or rhyming certain words to cast a spell, or of incantations that require speaking certain words to achieve certain success. So witches as an archetype, I think, are associated here in this game with rhymes, words. What would it mean for language to drive the UFO, or to be in control of the UFO? First, I want to explore this idea more. Captain Blubber wins the money to buy this UFO by participating in a quiz night at the inn in Jolly Roger's Lagoon. So, a quiz is usually something you win by speaking the right words, the right answers to the questions. It's about correct language, which, like spells, determines its success. So how are Captain Blubber and Gruntilda connected? If I say their names are the two names that refer to sounds from the mouth, then how else? Well, weirdly, I think they're connected through the character of Captain Blackeye. Captain Blackeye is, on the one hand, similar to Captain Blubber. They are captains dressed similarly in their black and red clothes. Captain Blackeye has a boat hire business in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. They are both called Captain B, for whatever that's worth. Then Grunty, Then Grunty, let's look at her. So, with her, Captain Blackeye was originally the villain of the game that Banjo-Kazooie was based on, the game called Dream, Land of Giants. So Grunty effectively replaces Captain Blackeye, as far as I can tell, as the villain of the game. This makes sense to me for several reasons. The game is fairly piratey, with a treasure cove themed area and a rusty bucket area, the ship, which features a treasure map on it. This ship is said to be owned by Grunty, but Grunty is a witch, a type of person who doesn't usually own ships. The area Mad Monster Mansion also features a portrait of Captain Blackeye in the master bedroom, as if he were the owner of this mansion, and again a portrait next to Grunty. It conflates the images of Grunty and Blackeye in such a way that make it seem that they're both the same villain, the supposed villain of this game. More esoteric points are that Grunty loses an eye, herself, and her statue, so she is also one-eyed, like he is, in some symbolic sense. and also her doll. Once again, why would language ride the ship? Let's look at language again. The Greek alphabet decorates one of the temples in Atlantis. The door to the temple features a series of letters which are then reproduced in the 4 water bearers which front the castle. By throwing eggs at the letter baskets, you can open up the temple, so a series of letters, or a word, opens up the gate. In what sense does language open the gate? What does it open the gate to? Well, to a temple. I'm going to look at other instances of temples where this game associates temple with language. For example, the cheat code temple. A temple where shooting eggs at specific letters unlocks a certain word, and this word then unlocks a secret, a cheat. This temple is a ceremonial, special sort of place. Banjo Kazooie also places the cheat codes in a castle, a sand castle, but still evoking a ceremonial sort of place, a place of elevated status. It's not a cave or an opening in the woods. It's a construction intended for high status operations. A castle, the home of a heavenly being. Atlantis, I would claim, is then not the only place that associates this process of word creation, letter by letter words, with an elevated place such as a temple, the temple of the fishes. I'd think this is something the games are leaning at.